Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Stephanie, and today I'm sharing everything I read, listened to, and crafted in April. For books, first up is The River Has Roots by Amal El-Mohtar. This was published in March of 2025 and is in the fantasy genre. This is a novella, only 130 pages, which was right up my alley in terms of the fantasy genre, since I'm not a big fantasy reader. The story follows two sisters and the sacrifices they're willing to make for each other that go beyond this life. I thought the writing itself was good. It was beautiful language, very poetic, a strong link to music and songs throughout, and there are verses that the sisters have written. Where the book missed for me, one was the length, which is ironic because due to the short nature of it, I felt it didn't do enough to introduce the world, although the world was a very prevalent component of the story, and I felt like I was just missing something throughout. I didn't know enough about the world to understand the things that were happening, and I didn't have the rules for the world. So I feel like there were pieces that I could have enjoyed more had I known that information. Additionally, there's no concrete resolution to this main storyline, so some readers may feel unsatisfied with this, given there is somewhat of a conclusion, but then the story just ends because it's so short, so you don't get that full wrap-up. Overall, I gave The River Has Roots by Amal El-Mohtar 3.25 stars. Interestingly, though, there is an excerpt story from her new short story collection, Seasons of Glass and Iron, and I read through that and I really enjoyed the story that they had in the back of the book. It felt like a Grimm's fairy tale retelling, so I'm going to add that short story collection to my TBR, and hopefully you'll see it here soon. Next up is Life and Death and Giants by Rindo. This was published in September of 2025 and is part of literary fiction and some magical realism. So this book follows the life of Gabriel. He is a giant who is born to an English mother of an Amish family. So the strengths of the novel center around its strong ties to realism, even though there is magical realism with Gabriel being a giant. He is, I think, close to 8 feet tall. Using his giganticism, which is reality within the story, is more of a symbolic weight in sort of how his presence within the world being his height, but also just his personality presence. The book leans heavily, I think, into grief. There is a lot of sad turns of events in the story. So it shows you how grief can sort of shape identity and how then religion, as many people turn to when they're grieving, can uplift and potentially even hold back people from resolution. The novel is strong in its tone. I think it captures the emotions and the messiness of emotions very well, while the plot sort of takes a backseat. So if you're a very plot-driven reader, this may not be the story for you. I enjoyed the development of the characters. I less enjoyed the amount of sports and sports references, which accounted, I would say, for at least half of the book, and different sports, baseball, football, wrestling. But this is very much a personal preference, so if you enjoy those things, you might enjoy this book more. Overall, it is a good book. I did think it was a moving story, and I gave Life and Death and Giants by Rindo 3 stars. Also, for completeness, the next book I finished was Volume 6 of the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I love this historical fiction book series. I won't belabor that here. If you are new, the series follows Emma M. Lyon, who is a young woman in London in the late 19th century, navigating life and society as a single female with no family and very moderate financial means. But it's witty and it's quirky, and it has the most adorable characters. So, of course, I gave this volume 5 stars. Next up is The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami. This was also published in March of 2025 and is a dystopian fiction. This one I read as part of the Anti-Brain Rot Reading Challenge, which is hosted by Janani of This Story Ain't Over, which is also linked below. This was the April Fiction Book Club for Arab History Month. This novel uses a speculative premise to interrogate surveillance and autonomy between private life and the government. The story unfolds around a singular character, Sarah, who gets caught up in risk stratification that the government does, which utilizes your past experiences, past crimes, relationships with people who might be criminals, and then more recently, your dreams, which is where the title of the book comes from. So using dreams as potential evidence, blurring the line between what someone thinks and what someone will actually do. And this is very akin to the Minority Report movie, which came out probably at least 15, 20 years ago. Lalami builds a world that feels uncomfortable, and there's a lot of data-driven logic, but it doesn't feel like it couldn't be happening. So there is a line towards realism, although to my knowledge, this isn't happening right now, but it doesn't feel that far away. The narrative follows the characters that are caught within this sort of apparatus and how prevention can end up becoming punishment. Critically, I think the book's strength lies in its restraint. it avoids heavy exposition and sort of lets the implications of the system emerge through the character's experience. So you do get a lot of where Sarah is now and then also her past and how those things collide. The prose heightens the sense of unease. So I think you really do get to feel where these characters are struggling within this system. But I wouldn't say I felt a lot of sympathy for them. I did get mad sometimes. I got mad at the situations that were happening. I got mad at some of the characters' reactions to situations, wishing they would do more, wishing they would do less. So I guess it did evoke an emotional response for me, maybe different than what was intended. Overall, I thought it's a thought-provoking book. Well done. It did wrap up rather quickly, so I did feel like we could have learned a little bit more about the resolution of the characters after the climax and the concluding part of the plot. It would have been nice to see how the characters fared after those events. So overall, I gave The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami 4 stars. Next up is A Walk Around the Block by Spike Carlsen. This one was published in October of 2020 and it is a nonfiction book. This I read along with The Outsider by Stephen King as part of my TBR Rewind series, where I'm tackling my TBR from bottom to top. So check out the next video to get full reviews on both of those books. And then lastly, The Professor and the Madman by Simon Winchester. This is another nonfiction which tells the story of two men and their intersection in creating the Oxford English Dictionary and creating really the first comprehensive dictionary back in the 19th century. I knew nothing about how a dictionary was created or what would even go into that, so I found this to be fascinating in that respect. The writing is a little dry. It's a nonfiction, but there are definitely nonfictions that can spin a story out of facts for sure. This writing was a little more on the dry side, more just laying down the facts and less of the emotion, given that it is a book about words that also has just a little bit more of a dry capacity to it. This story, like I mentioned, takes place in most or all in the 19th century, but some of the words and the diction that the author chooses to use is a little off, more modern than it should be. So you're reading along, totally immersed in the story, and then all of a sudden the author will describe something as awesome. And I don't think that was a word that was commonly used back in the 19th century, but please correct me down in the comments if I'm incorrect. So that sort of kind of threw me out, like, wait a minute, what century are we in now? So I thought it was 1888. Now we're talking about things being awesome. So other than that, though, it was a good read for a nonfiction. I ended up giving this 3 stars. So that was it for my April reads. Overall, I read 7 books, 2,399 pages, 0 hours of audiobook this month, 71% fiction, and my most read genres were historical and literary. And my average rating was 3.79 stars. So tell me in the comments, what was your best book of April? This is what I have coming up in May, what I'm currently reading or planning to read. So stay tuned to hear my thoughts on these next month. Now on to crafting. So I have made no progress on my cross stitch. I just haven't been in the mood to work on it or in the brain space to look at tiny, tiny little squares. So maybe next month, but we'll see. But I have been working on my diamond painting. So this is where we are now. So about a third of the top done and starting a little bit now on the bottom and working towards the middle. So this has been great. I recently did a sprint where I worked a good chunk on that. So if you ever need someone to hang out with while you're working on either crafting, reading, or productivity, check out my live sprints on my channel. And if you enjoyed this wrap up, go ahead and like and subscribe. I really appreciate you being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.